Hello, incredible story enthusiasts. Welcome to Story Room Lab. Before we delve into the story, take a second to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss one of our dramatic episodes. Now, tell me in the comments below, where are you watching this story unfold from? I love seeing our community grow across the globe. Now let's delve into the story. The rain in Stuttgart felt less like weather and more like a punishment. It hammered against the glass of the barracks window, a fitting soundtrack for the kind of cold, clinical exhaustion that settles in your bones after 3 months of high-intensity training exercises. I was Lieutenant Colonel Marcus, Rhino Thorne 38, Special Forces Group. My life was defined by precision, threat assessment, and the cold comfort of a rifle grip. Family, domesticity, love. Those were things I'd learned to compartmentalize into neat, small boxes sealed tight for future inspection. They were vulnerabilities I couldn't afford in my line of work. Until 300 hours on a Tuesday, when one of those boxes exploded. My phone, a hardened military-grade burner I kept specifically for personal emergencies, vibrated on the metal locker beside my cot. The screen displayed a single, simple contact, Sarah. Sarah. The name itself was a soft spot, a breach in my tactical defenses. We'd met 6 months ago on a 2-week stateside leave. A chance encounter at a friend's wedding that somehow blossomed into a complicated, long-distance relationship. She was a single mother, a brilliant architect, and the most fiercely protective person I had ever met. Her son, Ethan, was 8, a quiet, sharp kid with eyes that saw entirely too much for his age. Our relationship was new, fragile, constantly stressed by the time zones and the nature of my job, but it was real. It was the only civilian connection I truly cared about maintaining. I snatched the phone before the second ring could cut through the quiet. Thorne. The voice on the other end wasn't Sarah's gentle, steady tone. It was a high-pitched, ragged whisper, laced with barely controlled panic. Marcus? It's Ethan. I sat bolt upright, the blanket pooling around my waist. The cold German air was suddenly irrelevant. Every sensory input, every muscle fiber, snapped to maximum alert. This was not a playful call. This was a signal fire. Ethan. Talk to me, son. Slowly. Where's your mom? My voice was low, trained to be calm even when my internal clock was screaming $T $5 seconds until impact. She went out with him. Dave. My jaw tightened at the name. Dave. Sarah's ex-boyfriend. A greasy, entitled trust fund kid who hovered around her like a bad smell, making vague threats and generally trying to leverage his way back into her life. Sarah had been clear he was manipulative and potentially dangerous, but she'd kept their interactions minimal, focused only on co-parenting logistics, often with a friend present. The thought of him anywhere near Ethan sent a jolt of pure, predatory anger through me. When did she leave, Ethan? And what are you doing? She left 2 hours ago. I'm in the linen closet. Under the coats. I took Mom's phone. The spare one she hides. His breathing was quick, shallow. Hyperventilation was setting in. Good. You did perfectly. Now tell me what is happening right now, Ethan. Don't worry about words. Just tell me what you hear. There was a muffled sound, and then Ethan's tiny, terrified voice delivered the line that would shatter my entire worldview, redefine my priorities, and launch the most unauthorized, high-risk, personal extraction mission of my career. Mom's boyfriend's friends are betting who kills me first. They think I'm asleep. I heard them talking. They're waiting for Dave to come back. They said he has to do it to prove he's in. The words hung in the air, grotesque and unbelievable, yet delivered with the chilling, unvarnished honesty only a child in profound danger can manage. For 3 minutes, I didn't speak a single word. My mind wasn't racing. It was running a diagnostic sequence faster than any supercomputer. Threat level, catastrophic. Target, my charge. Location, unsecured. Resources, infinite. My heart rate, usually a disciplined 60 beats per minute, was now a percussive drum solo in my chest. The rational, mission-focused part of my brain was already formulating the response. This wasn't a skirmish. This was a full-scale invasion of my life. Ethan, listen to me closely. You are safe where you are. Stay silent. Stay still. Do not let them know you're awake. Do you understand? Yes. A barely audible squeak. Good boy. I am coming. I am leaving right now. I want you to remember the number of this phone. If this call drops, do not call back. Wait. Wait until I call you again. Do you understand? I understand, Marcus. Please hurry. I will, Ethan. I swear to God I will. I hung up. The world outside the barracks window, with its rain and its sleepy, ordered life, was an illusion. My reality was 3,000 miles away, centered on a terrified 8-year-old boy hiding in a linen closet in a suburban house in Virginia, surrounded by people who were making bets on his murder. I didn't bother with the formality of waking up Major General Hayes. I didn't write a memo. I didn't request a leave of absence. All protocols, all rules, all chains of command were instantly dissolved in the face of Ethan's message. This was no longer a mission, it was a crusade. I moved with the savage efficiency that had earned me the Rhino moniker. In 5 minutes, I was in my regulation fatigues, but I bypassed the standard issue duffel. I went straight for the locked metal container marked personal assets, deployment ready. Inside, the equipment was non-standard, custom-built, and ruthlessly effective. A silenced sidearm, extra magazines, a tactical knife designed for both utility and absolute finality, and a satellite phone pre-programmed with a specific set of numbers. These were tools meant for ghost operations, the kind of things that officially didn't exist. I made 3 calls on the satellite phone as I walked out of the barracks and towards the motor pool. The first was to Sergeant Major Bear Costas, my second-in-command, currently on R&R in Berlin. Bear, unauthorized personal deployment. Need you wheels up to Ramstein in 1 hour. Code word, Valkyrie. Valkyrie was our emergency code for the family is under threat. All assets immediately converge. It was a code we'd sworn never to use, a promise to always protect our own, even if it meant risking everything. The second call was to a contact in Ramstein Air Base, a highly placed logistician who owed me a debt that was both deep and dangerous. I need a C-17 loaded and fueled for an immediate transatlantic flight. Destination, Dulles International. Full military priority. No manifest, no paperwork. If anyone asks, you don't know me. You get the plane in the air or I end your career, your pension, and possibly your life. I'll be there in 2 hours. The third call was the most critical. It was to an encrypted number belonging to a man I only knew as the broker, a civilian with deep, dark connections in D.C. I need everything. Addresses, phone records, bank transfers, social media, associates, criminal history, and current whereabouts for David S. Henderson and any known associates currently in his residence. I need it in 2 hours. Send it to the secure line. Payment is 5 times the usual rate. I don't care about the laws, broker. This is personal. Get it done. I didn't wait for any of them to confirm. They knew the gravity of the code word and the chilling finality in my voice. When a Special Forces commander calls in Valkyrie, you don't ask questions, you execute. As I drove the motor pool jeep through the gates, the rain-slicked road stretching towards the highway, the military guy in me had vanished. The lieutenant colonel was gone. All that remained was Marcus Thorne, the man who loved Sarah and in a startling, visceral way, loved her son. And that man was bringing war to anyone who dared threaten what was his. The drive from Stuttgart to Ramstein Air Base was a blur of high-speed maneuvers and near-constant communication. I had bypassed all traffic laws, treating the Autobahn like an obstacle course, the Jeep's engine screaming a protest that I happily ignored. Every minute gained was a minute Ethan spent alive, and that was the only metric that mattered. The military guy in me, the one who planned, calculated, and sought authorization, was dead. What remained was a predator operating purely on instinct and a lifetime of lethal training. Bear Costas, a mountain of a man with a mind like a razor and a loyalty that transcended bureaucracy, met me on the tarmac. He wasn't alone. Behind him stood 2 other members of my core squad. Slick Rodriguez, our communications and hacking specialist, and Doc Reynolds, a trauma surgeon whose calm demeanor masked a terrifying efficiency. They were all in civilian gear, their faces grim, having mobilized from R&R in record time. They didn't need to ask why Valkyrie had been called. They just looked at the fire in my eyes and understood. "Rhino," Bear rumbled, handing me a small, heavy duffel bag. We pulled these from the off-base locker. Unregistered clean. I glanced inside. It contained enough firepower to arm a small militia, all disassembled for transit. More importantly, it had the gear for a covert house entry and close quarters elimination. Good. Slick, what's the ETA on the broker's intel? Slick, already hunched over a shielded tablet, didn't look up. 30 minutes until the full package is compiled and encrypted. He's running an intercept on all local traffic near the target address. The house is a 2-story colonial in Great Falls, Virginia. Dave Henderson's name is on the deed, clean purchase, but his associates are showing hits on low-level organized crime, primarily extortion and minor drug trafficking. They're wannabes, Marcus, but wannabes with guns are still lethal. And they're betting on the murder of an 8-year-old, I said, my voice dangerously low. That makes them targets 1 through 10. The C-17 Globemaster, a colossal metal beast, was already waiting, engines whining. True to his word, my contact had pushed it to the absolute limit. There were no ground crews, no customs officers, and no security checks, just the ramp down, offering a cavernous maw for entry. Doc, prep for kinetic extraction and rapid trauma response. Bear, you're on perimeter and heavy cover, I ordered, climbing the ramp. We land at Dulles, then execute ground transport immediately. No civilian cars. We're going in hard and fast. As the heavy ramp sealed us inside the aluminum shell, I pulled out the satellite phone and initiated the second, encrypted call to Ethan. It was a calculated risk. I needed to assess the current threat level, but I had to minimize the duration of the transmission. Ethan, it's Marcus. Are you still safe? The silence was long, stretching every nerve. Then the small voice. Yes. They're watching something loud in the living room now. Beer bottles like clink. Good boy. Now tell me, where is your mom? She called a little while ago. She was crying. She said Dave took her phone and her keys, and she was stuck somewhere. A party? She didn't sound like Mom. She sounded scared. This was the variable I hadn't accounted for, Sarah's own kidnapping. My blood ran cold, but my focus remained laser-sharp. One problem at a time. Ethan was the priority now. Okay, Ethan, I need you to give me an inventory of the house. Any other windows or doors besides the front and back? He gave me a remarkably detailed floor plan, confirming a back sunroom with sliding glass doors and a small, high window in the laundry room. The kind of tactical intelligence a trained operator would seek. One more thing, Ethan. Do you know where Dave keeps a gun, or if the others have weapons? Dave has a shiny black gun under the mattress. The others put their bags near the front door. They're wearing big jackets. The intelligence was priceless. The shiny black gun suggested a standard pistol, likely a poorly maintained 9mm. The bags near the door meant they were ready for a quick exit. They knew what they were doing was illegal and planned to bolt. The big jackets likely concealed their own pieces. You are my eyes, Ethan. You are my best soldier. I am almost home. Stay under cover and do not move. I love you. Love you too, Marcus. Be careful. I disconnected and turned to my team. New intel. Sarah is also detained, location unknown, probably a secondary staging area. Our immediate objective remains the house. Kinetic entry, secure the boy, neutralize threats, extract. Slick, once we're airborne, your new mission is to locate Sarah's cell phone pings. Find out where she is. Slick nodded, his fingers already flying across the keyboard. Bear was methodically assembling his heavy-caliber weapon, his movements economical and deadly. Doc was checking his medical kit, his eyes reflecting the steely concentration of a man preparing for the worst kind of field surgery. As the Globemaster hurtled through the pre-dawn darkness, eating up the miles over the Atlantic, the adrenaline stabilized, replaced by a cold, surgical rage. I put the map of the Great Falls Colonial on the screen. The perimeter was soft, the internal defenses non-existent, and the threats were predictable, if despicable. They had made one critical error. They had threatened the family of a Special Forces battalion commander. I looked at the 3 men around me, my brothers, the best in the world. They were risking their careers, their freedom, and their lives on my personal, unsanctioned war. This wasn't about the flag or the mission brief. This was about the unspoken, sacred covenant we shared. When the chips were down, we protected our own. Gentlemen, I said, loading a magazine into my own custom rifle, the metallic click sounding deafening in the cargo hold. We are not going in to make arrests. We are going in to end the threat. No survivors leave that house, except the ones we brought to save. Understood? Understood, they chorused, their voices a deep, unwavering commitment in the dark cabin. The only acceptable outcome was Ethan's safety, and anyone standing in the way of that was about to find out what happens when a lieutenant colonel brings his battalion to a neighborhood knife fight. The clock was ticking, and we were coming in hot. The C-17's landing at Dulles was as silent and swift as a phantom. We touched down on an unused runway, the cargo bay doors already cycling open as the massive aircraft taxied. There was no ground crew, no welcoming party, only a black armored SUV with tinted windows waiting by the desolate tarmac, its engine idling. The broker had delivered, and with chilling efficiency. We piled out, the cold, humid air of Virginia immediately assaulting us, a stark contrast to the sterile dryness of the plain. "Slick, intel update on the house?" I demanded, already moving towards the SUV. "Active. 2 more vehicles pulled up about 15 minutes ago. Looks like an old sedan and a pickup. 3 additional hostiles confirmed by thermal imaging. Total 7 inside. Still no movement on Sarah's phone, sir. It's either off or being actively jammed." Slick's voice was tight, the tension palpable. 7 hostiles, not just the initial 3 or 4. The stakes had just ratcheted up considerably. 7 against 4, Doc muttered, adjusting the strap of his medical kit. "Good odds for us." His dark humor was a familiar comfort. "Doc, your priority is Ethan. Get him clear, secure, and stabilized. Bear, you're covering the north and east approaches. Slick, south and west, and be ready to breach the rear. I'm going in through the front. Standard dynamic entry protocols are out the window. This is direct action. Lethal force authorized on all armed individuals." My voice was flat, devoid of emotion, a switch flipped to mission mode. The personal vendetta was now channeled into pure, devastating tactical execution. As we drove, the SUV's interior was a hive of activity. We shed our civilian clothes, revealing tactical gear underneath. The broker had also supplied us with unmarked, dark gray combat uniforms, devoid of any insignia, the kind worn by ghost units that officially didn't exist. My custom rifle was quickly reassembled, its weight familiar and reassuring. I checked the action, the safety, the suppressor. My sidearm, a Sig Sauer P226, felt like an extension of my hand. The rage was a cold, sharp blade now, cutting through any hesitation. Slick's tablet displayed a live feed from a drone he'd launched from the SUV, already hovering silently above the target house. The colonial-style home, usually a picture of suburban tranquility, now pulsed with a sinister energy. Figures moved behind the drawn blinds, shadowy forms against the dimly lit interior. Thermal signatures confirm 7 hostiles. All look male. 1 in the kitchen, 2 in the living room, 2 in a back room, 2 moving between levels. "The one near the kitchen matches Dave Henderson's profile from the intel," Slick relayed, his voice a calm drone of information. "Still no sign of Ethan, but no active search either. He's either still hidden or they haven't discovered him." "He's hidden," I affirmed, my voice a low growl. "He's waiting for me." The SUV pulled into a deserted cul-de-sac 2 blocks from the target, its engine shutting off with a soft hiss. We disembarked, melting into the pre-dawn shadows, moving with the practiced fluidity of hunters. The suburban quiet was deceptive, a thin veil over the impending storm. The air was heavy with unspoken tension, the kind that precedes an explosion. We approached the house from different angles, using the cover of manicured hedges and sleeping cars. My heart rate was steady now, my breathing controlled. The fear for Ethan, though a constant hum beneath the surface, was now a fuel, not a distraction. I was the weapon, honed and directed. Bear moved like a phantom, his massive frame barely disturbing a single leaf as he secured the north flank, his suppressed rifle taking aim at the second-story windows. Slick and Doc circled to the rear, Doc carrying a specialized charge for a quick, quiet breach of the sunroom's glass doors. I took the front, moving silently up the flagstone path, my boots making no sound on the wet concrete. The front door, an ornate oak piece, was my entry point. I knelt, examining the lock. A standard deadbolt, easily defeated. I pulled a specialized tool from my kit, a small, intricate device designed for silent lock bypass. Every second was precious. I could hear the muffled thrum of a bass line from inside, and the occasional burst of coarse laughter, a soundtrack of casual evil. As the lock clicked open with an almost imperceptible whisper, Slick's voice came through my comms. "Rhino, I have movement in the backyard. 2 hostiles, heading towards the sunroom. Looks like they're stepping out for a smoke." "Copy," I replied, my hand already on the door handle. "Doc, Slick, engage as necessary. Eliminate the threats before they can react. No hesitation. No second chances. This wasn't a raid, it was an execution." I pushed the door open, slipping inside like a shadow. The entryway was dark, leading into a living room bathed in the flickering blue light of a large-screen TV. 2 men were slumped on a leather couch, mesmerized by some violent action movie, empty beer bottles littering the coffee table. They were oblivious. My rifle came up, swift and precise. 2 silenced shots, almost simultaneous. The men didn't even twitch, their heads slumping forward, crimson blossoms spreading slowly on the cushions. I moved past them, already scanning the next room. The smell of stale beer, cheap pizza, and unwashed bodies was overwhelming. Through the archway, I saw the kitchen. Dave Henderson stood by the refrigerator, holding a can of beer, talking to another man who was rummaging through a cupboard. Henderson, the architect of Ethan's terror, looked exactly as I'd pictured him, smug, arrogant, utterly devoid of conscience. "Dave," I said, my voice cutting through the bass line and the low murmur of their conversation. He spun around, eyes wide with sudden alarm, his hand reflexively going for his waistband. He was too slow. My weapon barked once, the suppressed shot a mere whisper in the confined space, but the round found its mark, slamming into his chest. He staggered back, a look of shocked disbelief on his face, before collapsing to the floor, dead before he hit the tiles. The other man in the kitchen froze, his hands in the air, a bag of chips spilling from his grasp. "Where is the boy?" I demanded, my rifle aimed squarely at his head. Upstairs. Front bedroom," he stammered, terror etched on his face. "He's in the closet in the master bedroom. Dave said he wanted to scare him more later." A sickening wave of pure fury washed over me. They hadn't just forgotten him. They had been actively prolonging his torment, toying with him. The man's last words would be his undoing. 2 more shots, silent and final. Another threat eliminated. "Rhino, rear clear." Slick's voice crackled over the comms. 2 hostiles down. Entering through the sunroom, moving to secure the ground floor. "Doc, meet me upstairs." "I've got a lead on Ethan," I replied, already taking the stairs 2 at a time, my boots thudding softly on the carpeted steps. My internal clock was ticking down, not by minutes, but by the sheer, brutal urgency of getting to Ethan. The master bedroom door was ajar. I pushed it open with my foot, sweeping the room with my rifle. Empty. I moved to the walk-in closet, my heart pounding a primal rhythm. I flung the door open. And there he was. Ethan, curled into a tiny ball amidst hanging coats, his face streaked with tears, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and a fragile hope. He looked impossibly small, impossibly vulnerable. "Marcus?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. I dropped to one knee, my rifle momentarily forgotten, clattering softly against the floor. I pulled him into a fierce, protective embrace, crushing him against my chest, inhaling the scent of his fear and his childish innocence. "I told you I'd come, son," I murmured, my voice thick with emotion. "I told you. It wasn't over yet. The house still needed to be cleared, Sarah still needed to be found, and the consequences of my unsanctioned war would soon come raining down. But for now, in that dark closet, holding Ethan, I knew that every rule broken, every risk taken, every life ended had been worth it. Holding Ethan was the only moment of true stillness I had experienced since the phone call. His tiny body, rigid with terror moments before, slowly started to melt against my heavy tactical vest. He wasn't crying anymore, just trembling, his breath hitching against my ear. It was a raw, visceral relief, a flood of emotion that nearly buckled my knees. The kind of dangerous distraction I'd trained my entire life to suppress. I pushed it down, sealing it back into the smallest, most secure box in my mind. The mission wasn't complete. Sarah was still out there. Doc, moving with a controlled urgency, arrived moments later. He took one look at the scene, the darkened room, the open closet, the 2,000-yard stare of the exhausted 8-year-old, and knew exactly what to do. "Hey, buddy," Doc said softly, his voice a warm, reassuring counterpoint to my grim military tone. "You're safe now. I'm Document. I'm going to check you over, okay? We're going to get you a warm blanket and some hot chocolate." Ethan's grip on me loosened reluctantly, and he turned to Doc, the quiet professional instantly radiating safety. I watched them for a heartbeat, just long enough to confirm Ethan was no longer in immediate danger, and then the mission took over again. "Slick Bear, status report," I ordered over the comms, rising to my full height. Bear's gruff voice answered first. "Ground floor clear. All 7 hostiles neutralized, Marcus. No ID on 3 of the newer arrivals, but they were armed. One of them had a hunting rifle in his bag. Standard sweep confirms no other personnel and no obvious escape routes. House is cold." "Good," I replied, grabbing a clean sheet from the shelf and draping it over Ethan's head to shield his eyes as Doc guided him out of the room. "Slick, I need you to focus on their electronics. We need Sarah's location. Now." I moved through the house with a speed that belied the methodical destruction I had wrought. Every dead body I passed was a necessary casualty, a consequence of crossing a line they should never have approached. Dave Henderson's body lay crumpled by the kitchen fridge, a final, fitting piece of garbage. I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Slick was already in the living room, working with the speed of a digital ghost. He'd bypassed the lock screen on the first smartphone he found, belonging to one of the men on the couch, and was running a deep packet inspection of recent messages. "Got something, Rhino," Slick said, not looking up, his face illuminated by the harsh white light of the screen. "A group chat. Looks like the real boss, not Dave, is coordinating. They were planning to move Sarah this morning. They call the location the kennel. The last message is a simple address, coordinates disguised as a delivery manifest." He rattled off a set of coordinates and a vague address, a defunct industrial site 40 miles north, near the Maryland border. The kennel. It sounded like a holding pen, which only intensified my grim resolve. "The real boss?" I asked. "Yeah." The conversation refers to him as Mr. C. These guys were low-level muscle trying to join a local organization. Dave was their entrance fee, and Ethan was the initiation, a sick, twisted loyalty test. They took Sarah to use as collateral against Dave, but now that he's dead, they have her as leverage against whoever comes for her. Which is us. I checked my watch. 0430 local time. We had maybe an hour and a half before dawn, and less time before authorities arrived to investigate the bullet-riddled, blood-splattered house, even if they were called in late. "We move now," I commanded. "Bear, clean up sequence alpha. Make it look like a drug deal gone spectacularly wrong. Emphasize internal conflict. We leave nothing that traces back to us or to Ethan." Bear, the master of plausible deniability, nodded grimly and began his work, a grim dance of evidence suppression, bullet tracing, and the careful repositioning of objects to shift the narrative from professional hit to domestic crime. While Bear worked, I found Doc securing Ethan in the armored SUV, wrapped in my own blanket from the barracks, a warm juice box in his hands. Doc had the calm control of a combat medic, ensuring the boy's psychological trauma was being addressed, even as the world around him exploded. "He's physically fine, Marcus. Just shock and exhaustion," Doc reported. "But he's sharp. He knows we came for him. He asked if you were going to bring his mom back too." That question, if you were going to bring his mom back too, was a punch to the gut. It was a promise I had not yet been able to fulfill, and it added a terrifying weight to the next phase of the operation. I climbed into the passenger seat, the heavy, armored door clicking shut with a sound of finality. I pulled out my satellite phone, now useless for its primary purpose, but still capable of functioning as a highly encrypted data link. I fired off a brief, cryptic message to my general back in Stuttgart. Extraction, successful. Secondary target location acquired. Mission continues. Consequences accepted. It was my resignation, my confession, and my declaration of war, all in 10 words. The fallout would be devastating. Court-martial, dishonorable discharge, possibly prison. But sitting there, with Ethan safe behind me, none of it mattered. The only thing that mattered was the location Slick had just fed into the vehicle's navigation system. "Slick, run a full surveillance package on the kennel. Ingress and egress routes, exterior observation points, any signs of organized defense," I instructed, my voice hard and cold again. As the SUV pulled away from the quiet suburban street, leaving the death house behind, I looked down at my hands. They were steady, but the adrenaline tremor was just beginning to set in beneath the surface. I had executed 7 men who had conspired to murder an 8-year-old, and the only emotion I felt was impatience. I had not slept in 30 hours. I had crossed an ocean, violated international military law, and created a geopolitical incident that would take years to untangle. But Sarah was still a captive. The true test of the Rhino was not the kinetic action, but the relentless, uncompromising pursuit of the objective. I looked at the dark road ahead. The glow of the distant city lights a warning sign. I was not just a soldier. I was an avenging force, and I was coming for the man who called himself Mr. C. He was about to find out that when you threaten the foundation of a man like me, the ensuing fight is less a battle and more an extinction-level event. I had saved my son. Now I was coming for my woman. The drive to the kennel was the longest hour of my life. Every second ticked by with the agonizing slowness of a poorly synchronized timer, yet the speed of the armored SUV ensured we ate up the miles. We left Ethan and Doc in a heavily secured safe house, a prearranged location provided by the broker, with specific instructions. Ethan, bless his courage, had insisted on a final, whispered plea. Bring Mom home. The coordinates led us to a derelict industrial park, a vast, decaying wasteland of rusted corrugated steel and broken concrete near the state line. The target facility, a sprawling warehouse complex, was ominously quiet. Perfect for holding secrets, perfect for making people disappear. Slick's drone feed, now visible on the SUV's dashboard screen, confirmed the layout. The building had 2 entry points, a massive rolling service door and a single heavily reinforced personnel door near the loading dock. Thermal imaging showed 4 active signatures inside, one of them isolated in a back room, likely Sarah. The other 3 were clustered near the main entrance, 2 armed guards and presumably Mr. C. 3 against 3, Bear summarized, checking the thermal signature of his heavy rifle. We're over-equipped for this. They're guarding something more than just Sarah, I corrected, my eyes narrowed on the feed. They took the risk of killing a child. They're not amateurs. There's something else here. We go in hard, no delay, no talking. We disembarked behind a stack of shipping containers, the metallic smell of rust and decay heavy in the air. We moved with the speed and silence of ghosts, each man knowing his part with lethal clarity. Bear took up position 70 yards out, establishing the kill zone and providing overwatch. Slick moved to the west side, setting up a disruption charge on the main service door. My objective was the personnel door. Go, I hissed into the comms. Slick initiated the small, shaped charge. Instead of a loud bang, the charge emitted a high-frequency, ear-splitting shriek designed to disorient and confuse, while simultaneously fusing the locking mechanism. It was a brutal, non-lethal distraction that would buy us precious seconds. I hit the door hard, my shoulder slamming against the steel frame. It took 2 impacts, powered by all the suppressed rage of the past 48 hours, before the reinforced door buckled inward with a violent, tearing screech. I swept the interior. The vast space was dimly lit by security lights, revealing stacks of crates and machinery. The 3 men were reeling from the noise and confusion. One of the guards, a massive brute in a leather jacket, recovered first, bringing his rifle up. My first shot was a clean, silenced report, dropping the brute instantly. The second guard, realizing the immediate, devastating threat, bolted for cover behind a stack of crates. Mr. C, however, was different. He was standing by a central desk, a thin, impeccably dressed man, not at all what I had expected from the boss. He wasn't reaching for a gun. He was reaching for a small, metallic device on his desk. Marcus Thorne, Mr. C said, his voice smooth and unnervingly calm, echoing slightly in the vast space. I figured you'd be the one. You Special Forces types are so predictable when it comes to your domestic attachments. You made a bet on killing an 8-year-old, I stated, advancing with slow, deliberate steps, my rifle steady. That makes you predictable, Mr. C. You're small-time evil looking for big league recognition. It was leverage, he scoffed, his composure beginning to crack. Leverage against you. Dave was supposed to bring you here. Now I guess the leverage is just her. As he finished the sentence, he slammed his hand down on the device. An alarm blared, not a simple building alarm, but a deep, throbbing siren that pulsed through the floor. You're too late. I have bigger problems than you, Colonel. You can't stop the package, Mr. C screamed, before diving behind the desk. At that moment, the entire warehouse shuddered. I heard the roar of an engine and the sound of heavy tires spinning on concrete. A massive forklift suddenly roared around a stack of crates, driven by the second guard, heading straight for the back room where Sarah was held. The guard's goal wasn't rescue, it was obliteration. I fired a controlled burst into the forklift's engine block. The machine stuttered, spewing smoke, and veered violently, crashing into a stack of boxes but failing to reach the back room door. Bear! Target on the move. I yelled into the comms, already sprinting towards the back room, the adrenaline surging, my legs pumping like pistons. Behind me, the second guard emerged from cover, firing a wild, unaimed burst that chewed up the concrete floor behind my heels. I spun, firing 2 quick shots that dropped the guard before he could reload. I reached the back room, the door secured by a simple padlock. I kicked the door once, near the lock, leveraging my entire body weight and momentum. The wood splintered, the frame groaned, and the door flew inward. Sarah was there. She was bound to a metal chair, gagged with duct tape, her eyes wide with terror, but instantly flashing with recognition and fierce relief when she saw me. She looked bruised, exhausted, but alive. Sarah. I ripped the tape from her mouth and cut the restraints with my tactical knife. Marcus. Oh God, Marcus, Ethan. Ethan is safe. Doc has him. I'm taking you home, Sarah. Right now. I pulled her up, wrapping an arm protectively around her. Suddenly, Mr. C appeared in the doorway, armed with a hidden shotgun, his face contorted in a mask of impotent fury. You don't get the girl, Colonel. You get the consequences. Before I could react, before I could bring my rifle to bear, the world outside erupted. Boom. Bear's heavy-caliber rifle, firing an armor-piercing round from his overwatch position, slammed through the thin wall of the warehouse, striking Mr. C with the force of a wrecking ball. The shotgun fired harmlessly into the ceiling, and the final threat was eliminated. Perimeter clear. Threat neutralized. Extraction route secure, Bear's steady voice reported. I led a half-staggering, half-running Sarah out of the warehouse and into the light of the pre-dawn. She collapsed against me, her face buried in my shoulder, the harsh realities of the past day dissolving in the simple relief of being safe. Your son called, Sarah, I murmured, holding her tight, inhaling the scent of her hair, the only anchor I needed. He said you were in trouble. I brought my battalion. We got into the SUV and drove away from the industrial park, leaving behind 7 dead men, a crippled warehouse, and an unsanctioned war zone. The journey back was silent, punctuated only by the ragged sound of Sarah's breathing and the gentle hum of the armored vehicle. By mid-morning, I was back at the safe house, watching Sarah hold Ethan, tears streaming down her face as she promised him he was safe. It was the most beautiful, fragile thing I had ever witnessed. My mission was complete. 2 hours later, the broker arrived with a team of lawyers, a sealed plea deal, and an entire life prepared for me to step into. I was facing immediate arrest by military police. The scale of my transgression, crossing an ocean with an unauthorized unit, engaging in kinetic action on sovereign soil, was monumental. I kissed Sarah goodbye, a long, deep kiss that was both a promise and a farewell. I will handle the consequences, I told her, my hands cupping her face. But I regret nothing. I would do it again tomorrow. I walked out to the waiting military transport, my head held high. I was Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Thorne, and I had sacrificed my career, my rank, and my freedom. But I had saved my family. As the plane took off, carrying me towards the inevitable court-martial, I looked down at the sprawling landscape of suburban America. Somewhere down there, Sarah and Ethan were safe. And in the end, that was the only victory that mattered.